Good morning, everybody. This is 2-minute warning. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. Thanks. Good morning. The American Eel Board is now in session. Before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to Bob to introduce new commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to introduce two new commissioners or proxies sitting at the table. Tom Moore from Pennsylvania is a proxy for Representative Mike Barab. He's back next to Leroy. And David Sikorsky is a proxy for Delegate Dana Stein from Maryland. So two new faces at the table. Just want you folks to introduce yourselves and you get to know some new commissioners or proxies. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Another commissioner note, as you know, our good friend Tom O'Connell, who chaired this board so ably, is not on the ASMFC anymore. I just want to thank him for the superb work he did getting us through Addendum 4 and the great work he did as a commissioner here, and I hope we see him back here on ASMFC in the future. The first item is board consent to the agenda and the proceedings. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I will ask for approval of the agenda and the minutes, and if nobody has any objections, we will consider those approved and move on to the next item, which is public comment. We have not had anybody sign up for public comment, which brings us to agenda item 4, the technical committee report, and I will turn it over to Sheila Eiler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The technical committee was asked to review a life cycle survey that was submitted by the state of Maine. And I just want to give some background on the life cycle survey requirements. As part of Addendum 4, a life cycle survey was required for states that have glass eel harvest that is greater than 750 pounds. At this time, that only applies to the state of Maine. And the survey requirements require sampling of all life stages of eels, including the glass, yellow, and silver eel. And the sampling needs to be done in at least one river system within the state. And there are several sampling requirements that are listed in Addendum 4, and I'll go through those later as we talk specifically about Maine's proposal. Maine submitted this life cycle survey design to the technical committee this summer, and the technical committee reviewed that on a conference call in July. Just to give an overview of the proposed survey from Maine, it's a 3-year proposed survey to be conducted on all life stages of eels, including glass, yellow, and silver eels. It's going to occur in the Cabasicanti stream drainage. And just to give you an idea of the intensity of sampling required for this effort, it's 7 months worth of daily sampling on various different life stages and using different gear types. Some details of the proposed survey is that it falls under the requirements of Addendum 4. It looks at an index of abundance by life stage, biomass by life stage, mortality, prevalence of the parasitic swim bladder nematode, and average length and weight of eels in all life stages. In addition, age analysis will also be done on yellow and silver eels. The technical committee commended Maine for the survey design that they had put together, but we did have some concerns over the science and the management applicability to the results from the study. The biggest concern from the technical committee was the duration of the study. Maine proposed a 3-year study, and the intent from the technical committee is this would be a life cycle survey to be conducted over at least one life cycle of the American eel, which in Maine could be 15 to 20 years. So the fact that it was a 3-year study, we were very concerned that we couldn't do the cohort analysis that we wanted to do on the survey results. We also had some concerns about the size of the watershed. It seemed to be relatively small. We weren't sure of the applicability of the results to the other watersheds in Maine where the glass eel harvest is occurring. And we had some concerns about the tagging models that were being used in the study. Tagging early life stages of eels, both glass and elver eels, has not been conducted rigorously in the field, and so a pilot study might be necessary to verify some of the model assumptions used with those tagging methods. So the TC is supportive of the designs it is at this time, but we would like to see a little bit more development of that. And we would like to reestablish a subcommittee that we had working on the life cycle survey design. Prior to the development of Addendum 4, the technical committee had a subcommittee working on an ideal life cycle survey. We would like to work with Maine not only to develop this ideal life cycle survey that other states could use if they want to implement a life cycle survey, but also refine the survey that is being proposed by Maine, and that we're hoping that we can follow up again with the survey approval in the November meeting, and that Maine will be able to implement the survey starting in 2016. That's the end of my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sheila. Do we have any questions for Sheila? Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Sheila, for that overview. I do want to just create a little clarity around the issue of the duration of the study. There was some miscommunications between myself and my technical staff regarding this. The 3-year time frame that was referred to my staff related to the budget associated with it. As you all know, many states are budgeted on a biennium process, and so my commitment to start the life cycle study was for the remainder of the fiscal year that we were in and the following biennium year, so for FY15 and 16. So the commitment from the state of Maine is to fully follow through with the full life cycle study, which would be roughly 15 to 20 years, and to follow through it to the end. Obviously, from a budgetary standpoint, I can't say, hey, I'm going to commit money every year for 20 years. So the focus is to fully fund it. The money is within the budget through our EEL and Elver Management Fund. The funds are there for 3 years, and we anticipate with the continuation of this fishery and the continued sale of licenses, as well as other funds that are put into it, such as fine money and the money associated with what we consider pecuniary gains. If somebody goes over their quota, they have to actually pay the state the value of that quota back, and that's what will continue to secure funding into the future for the study. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that explanation, Pat. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right along. And, up next, time for me to turn the meeting over to our Executive Director, Bob Beal, as we have an item that affects the great state of Delaware.
Thank you, John. In order to introduce the topic for this agenda item, I'm going to ask Mike Wayne to go over a summary of Delaware's management program under Addendum 3. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to bring everybody up to speed, this is Addendum 3. It's the addendum that was implemented prior to Addendum 4. This Addendum 3 was completed in 2013 and implemented on January 1st, 2014. So this was impacting the 2014 fishing year. So going through the requirements for Addendum 3, there was a change in the minimum size for the yellow recreational and commercial fisheries to 9 inches. And remember, these measures that I'm going through were in response to the depleted stock condition that came out of the assessment, and are looking to lower the fishing mortality on the species. So a 9-inch minimum size was an increase from 6 inches. There was a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch minimum mesh size put in for yellow eel pots, with the allowance of a 4 by 4 inch escape panel of this 1/2 by 1/2 inch mesh. Beginning January 1st, 2014, for 3 years, that was intended to give the industry some ability to transition their current gear to the new regulation. That was an interim step. The recreational bag limit was decreased to 25 fish per day per angler, but there was still an allowance for crew and captains of the for-hire industry to have 50 fish bag limit per day for charters and their clients. So for Delaware's measures with Addendum 3, they maintained their 6-inch minimum size limit in the commercial and recreational fisheries for yellow eel. They have no minimum mesh size for pots, and their recreational possession limit was kept at 50 fish per angler. So Delaware's measures are not currently consistent with Addendum 3 to the American Eel FMP. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike on Delaware's current management program? Seeing any questions, what's the pleasure of the board? Mike has pointed out some inconsistencies between Delaware's management program and the requirements under Addendum 3. Dr. Daniel?
I'm prepared to offer a motion.
That'd probably be good to get the conversation started.
That should do it. I'd move that the American Eel Management Board recommend to the ISFMP Policy Board that the state of Delaware be found out of compliance for not fully and effectively implementing and enforcing Addendum 3 to the Fishery Management Plan for American Eel. Delaware has not implemented the following regulations required by Addendum 3, the 9-inch minimum size limit, the 1/2 inch minimum mesh size for pots, the 4x4 escape panel, the recreational 25 fish limit, and the captain and crew provisions. The implementation of these regulations is necessary to achieve the conservation goals and objectives of the FMP to rebuild the depleted American eel stock. In order to come back into compliance, the state of Delaware must implement all measures listed above as contained in Addendum 3 to the Fishery Management Plan for American Eel. And if I get a second, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak to my motion.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel. Is there a second? Doug Grout. Go ahead, Lewis.
Just my comments here are just related to the process. This is not an indictment of the folks from Delaware. I know that the staff and our members are concerned about this issue, but Delaware's legislature's had 2 opportunities to implement these regulations per their process in Delaware and have failed to do so. So I think this is a critical finding that we need to move forward with.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel. Doug, do you have any comment as a seconder? No. Other comments around the table? Yes, John Clark.
Yeah, if I might just take a second, Bob, to say what we've been trying to do in the fabulous first state on the American eel issue. We did bring this up to the legislature in 2014, as Lewis alluded to. We have a quirk in our law in that eels are a separate chapter in our code, and everything in the applying to eels is prescriptive in the code itself. Last year, we asked the legislature to consider making eels like the rest of our fin fish and allow us to manage them through regulation. We had some snags in going that route. This year, we tried that again, and there was still some concern in the legislature about that, and also in timing in getting the change for the prescriptive regulation to the, or the changing the law to the legislature this year. There was concern in the legislature they didn't have enough time to consider this, and they tabled it until January. So we do know that our legislature will be re-examining this in January when the next session starts, and hopefully we'll correct this at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any questions for Delaware or comments on the motion that's on the board? Not seeing any. Is the board ready to vote? I'll give a 30-second caucus, and then we'll take a vote on this issue. Yes, Mr. Adler.
If this passes, what's the timeline on moving forward with this versus when Delaware's legislature will have a chance to reconsider? How does that work?
John, can you answer that?
Well, I don't know the time frame of how quickly this out of compliance finding will make its way through the bureaucratic process here, but I know in Delaware that our legislature reconvenes in January, but I would not guess that this would be like something that would happen right away. I'm guessing before the end of the session. Our session ends June 30th of next year, so I'd go as far as say something will be done before June 30th, 2016 to rectify the situation.
Thank you, John. And just, Bill, to remind everyone of the ASMOC process, it's been a couple of years since we've had a noncompliance issue come before the board. If this motion were to pass, it would be forwarded to the ISFMP Policy Board, and if a similar motion passes at the Policy Board, that gets forwarded to the full Commission, and then the Commission, if a motion passes at the Commission, the timeline is that I have 10 working days to send a letter to the Secretaries of Commerce and Interior, notifying them of the noncompliance finding, and the Department of Interior and Commerce then have 30 days to make the determination whether the state is out of compliance. And they look at two questions. One is, has the state implemented the correct or consistent regulations with the FMP? And if not, do the lack of those regulations impact the conservation of the species? And if those questions, if both those questions are answered yes, then the secretaries can implement a moratorium on fishing in that state. But secretaries do have a 6-month discretionary window on the implementation date of that moratorium. So I can't comment on how long the decision would take in that 30-day period or if that 6-month discretionary window would be used, but that's the overall timeline since it's been a little while since the Commission's dealt with a noncompliance issue. Any other questions before the state's caucus? All right, seeing none, 30-second caucus, please. And just as a reminder, this is a final action of the Commission. So we'll have I'll ask Mike to have a roll call vote. All right, does anyone need more time to caucus? Seeing no hands up, Mike, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Maine?
Yes.
New Hampshire?
Yes.
Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
Yes.
Rhode Island?
Yes.
Connecticut?
Yes.
New York?
Yes.
New Jersey?
Yes.
Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Delaware?
Yes.
Maryland?
Yes.
The District of Columbia? The Potomac River Fisheries Commission?
Yes.
The Commonwealth of Virginia? This mic's not. Can you borrow Marty's?
Commonwealth of Virginia, yes.
Thank you. North Carolina, you're probably out too.
North Carolina, yes.
We'll wait.
This one. I know.
Okay, where were we? North Carolina.
Yes.
South Carolina.
Yes.
Georgia.
Yes.
Florida.
Yes.
National Marine Fisheries Service.
Abstain.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Abstain.
The motion carries unanimously with 2 abstentions from the federal services. So I think that takes care of this. As I mentioned before, this motion will be brought forward to the policy board for their deliberations tomorrow morning. The only other agenda item to come before the EO board is the nomination of a vice chair for the board. Do we have any nominations? Lynn Fagley.
Thank you. I would like to nominate Mr. Marty Gary from PRFC for the position of vice chair.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there a second to that nomination? Russ Allen, thank you. Any objection to electing Marty Gary as the vice chair of this board? Seeing none, congratulations, Marty. I think you have about 2 years to get up to speed on all the EEL issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the board can tolerate back-to-back Aggies chairing the committee, I'd be honored to do so.
They'll tough it out, I'm sure. Any other business before the eel management board? Seeing none, I introduced a couple people at the beginning. I want to introduce a couple more now we're wrapping up the eel board. We have Bob Steinberg from North Carolina sitting next to Lewis, who is the new legislative representative from North Carolina. Lewis is no longer sitting alone in the back of the room. He's pretty excited to have company. And we have two new staff members that I think were introduced yesterday, but this is the first coastwide board, so I wanted to reintroduce those folks. Ashton Harp is Ashton in the room? Where's Ashton? Ashton's back there. She is the new FMP coordinator at the commission. She's been on board for 2 or 3 weeks now. And we also have Kristen Anstead. Kristen is the new stock assessment person at the commission, filling the vacancy that we've had for a little while. So Kristen's been here 3 days. So we should expect a lot from her, and we've given that long tenure. So please help me in welcoming those folks and introduce yourselves. There's a lot of commissioners for them to, names and faces to put together. So welcome them to the commission. We're excited you guys are all here. Any other issues before the EO board? All right, not seeing any. We got done actually a little bit early. We'll start the TATOG board is next, right? Yes. We'll start the TATOG board in about 15 minutes, if that works for everybody.